All right, just clicking it over to Facebook. Hang on a second.
Here's in Caelesta.
Oh, nice.
All righty. Oh, we already got some people watching. Cool. Cool, cool, cool. That's delicious, by the way. I know we'll get to it, but that is really, really good, Brian.
Thank you.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm like not a
Share this one.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. Yeah, no, it's rosé is definitely a challenge to make. And I'm really happy with that one.
Cool. All right. We are live. Looks like the Hewitts are tuning in from Columbus. You're in the midst of a level 2 snow emergency. Geez, it's always something over there.
Jeez.
Super stinking hot or a snow emergency. My gosh. Oh, they've got a Denner Syrah to enjoy. You know, it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah.
Because here's a Caelesta wine that is also from, we're not opening this today, but this is from the Denner Vineyard.
What vintage, Chris?
Oh.
I got my 18.
Yeah, it's 18 as well for him.
Okay. Nice.
Awesome. Rappaport, San Diego in the house. David, we're going to be going to San Diego in June for an event. So we'll sure to let you know all about that, because we're going to have a series of events down there, big walk around tasting, trade, media. I think we might do some sort of a winemaker dinner at the wine vault, maybe, and then maybe somewhere down in downtown, like Del Frisco's or something like that. So stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Paso Wine Hour. I know it's been a little while, been a minute since we've been on. We were going to have a show similar to this, where we were going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the vineyard, but then a press release came out earlier in the week all about truffles. And I had the good fortune of going out there, and we'll tell the story here in just a second, of course. But what's been happening though lately here in Paso, we've been having actually some really nice weather, unfortunately, because we do want more rain at this point. I think we are a little ways to go before we're anywhere near average on our rainfall, because I think at the most we have somewhere around 14 or 15 inches, where normally we would have more like 35 to 40. And we're due for even more warm weather here coming up. And so let's all start hoping that some of that inclement weather that's hitting the Midwest finds its way around the globe and back around to us here in California, and especially here in Paso, because we could really use it. We've got so much going on here at the Paso Wine Alliance, lots of planning for this next coming year, considering a lot of live events are coming back around. And so we're going to do our best to keep going with all of the Paso Wine Hours, but just keep going to pasowine.com to see what we've got going on, or watch our social media feed, because that's where you'll be able to see when a show is coming on. And of course, you could always watch it afterward on Facebook Live or Facebook, because it lives there for a while. And so thank you to everybody that keeps watching it, because while we might have 30 or 40 people watching here live, by the weekend we often have a little over 1,000 views on the show. So appreciate all you people watching it after the fact. So thank you. All right, today's show is all about, well, it's about truffles here in California, here in the Central Coast, here in Paso. And it's a pretty neat story. I want to first, though, of course, introduce my guests. First, we have Lucas Pope. He's with Coastal Vineyard Services. Say hey, Lucas.
Hey, everybody. Super excited to be here today. Join Chris for a second time. And it's, really excited to have a chat every opportunity I can.
Yeah, Lucas was our wine grower of the year back in 2020, right?
2021, last year.
2021. Oh, that's the summer.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, my apologies. That's right. And that was really cool. That was a really fun show that we did. So thanks for coming back on. We also have Brian Farrell with Caelesta Vineyard, first timer on the Paso Wine Hour.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be doing this with two of my favorite people.
Right on. Cool, cool. Well, hey, here's an interesting thing. So we get a call here at the Alliance office from Brian about truffles. And what was really interesting is saying that, he has truffles and blah, 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 blah. I was like, what? Really? Isn't that like a Spain, Italy, France, French thing? And aren't they really super rare? And how do you all of a sudden have truffles? Well, actually, he didn't all of a sudden have truffles. This has actually been a really ongoing kind of thing. It's taken 7 years. What, Brian, is that right?
That is correct. And, they're pretty hard to commercially cultivate. And I was always skeptical, but we got, first truffle in 2020 after, I guess, 5.5 years in the ground. And then this is the first year, 2022, we're actually getting some like fist-sized, really pretty looking truffles, which is awesome. And getting them across, because it's a whole 10 acre parcel. So like it's, you can kind of see when you're having success, like in a couple years after you plant them, where you get these brulees where it's like scorched earth under the trees. So we've had those for probably 5 years now. So we knew we were.
That's a good sign, right? I mean, normally I think, you might see something like this under maybe a eucalyptus tree, where eucalyptus don't necessarily let anything grow under its canopy. It's kind of the reverse in this case, right? It's coming kind of from underground up.
That's correct. So it's like a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the tree. And beyond that, so once they actually start reproducing, that's what kind of they release, I guess, chemical compounds that burn everything above them in the soil. So
Oops, wrong one.
Yeah, you can actually see, well, I'll say you can actually see a brulee on that tree on the right in the picture. But basically you'll see, I mean, almost the entire truffier, it's brulees on every tree, which is really cool. And then in that picture on the left is one of the truffles that we found that, we ended up selling almost all of them to some of the local restaurants on the Central Coast, which was fun. Yeah, and also looking to do the same in about 2 weeks from now too.
Mm-hmm. And so, so the brulees. So let's back it up though here a second, because it was 2015, I think, that you purchased the property, right?
Correct.
And then, everyone, I think we've talked about this on the Paso Wine Hour before. And if you're new, we're gonna go over something with you. There's a lot of calcareous type of soils here, whether they are giant, big rocks on this, whether below the surface or on top of the surface, all the way down to like little ones all over. And as you look at these pictures, you can see some scattered white rocks here and there, in and amongst a little bit of that green kind of cover stuff that's growing there. So that's a good environment for truffles to grow. And of course, truffles are technically in the fungus family, right? And so this type of earth is kind of prime for it. And it's where you would normally find over in the old world truffles growing. But Brian and maybe Lucas, you can talk a little bit about this too. Like, who identified the fact that this little piece of land that you purchased in 15 was going to be perfect for truffles?
Yeah, so rewinding back to 2015, our goal is to always plant vines. And when we were looking at the property before even buying it, we did soil pits to make sure the soils were, what we were looking for, aka, calcareous limestone. And then we were pretty much moving forward the vineyard, and then we were approached by someone who was selling inoculated truffle trees. So we use oak trees, holly oaks to be specific, and he was in the region trying to get truffle started, and he came to us, and we thought about something really cool because grapes are everywhere, even olives are everywhere, but after looking at the soils reports, it was pretty obvious that our site, but also Paso in general, when you have pHs close to 8, are perfect for black truffles.
Yeah. Lucas, have you heard of this going on? You've been growing in this area for years now. I mean, have you heard of other people trying this out?
Yes, absolutely. There are at least 3 other places trying really hard to do the same thing that the Farrells are doing. But, the critical point for truffles is water and pH of the soil both have to be above 8.0. And I don't think anybody else has successfully pulled truffles off, even though some of the operations have been going on for a couple decades.
Wow.
So super exciting. Yeah, I remember the
So-
first hunt. We got the little tiny one, and it was kind of rotten and overripe, but it was just like, oh my gosh, this is doable. Their dream is realized at this point. So
Yeah, these holly oak trees, they're these dinky little trees, if you guys can see here. I mean, did they need to mature to some level? I mean, how big were they when they went into the ground? And then,
They're only like what, 2.5 feet tall, but we keep them pruned down to about, we target like 2 meters in height, just so that they expend their energy into a larger root structure, so we can get more truffles by providing with more of a habitat. So yeah, we like literally, other than pruning vines in the last month or so, we've also been pruning the oak trees too.
and now these trees, though, they basically come inoculated, right? I mean,
That
their
is correct.
structure and ball is inoculated.
That is correct. And it depends on who you buy the trees from, because ours were basically at a nursery, an indoor nursery, just essentially quarantined for like a good 6 months after they were inoculated, just to, keep them protected from contamination. And then they went straight in the ground. And then since then, we've also re-inoculated the soil. So we just build like what the French call like nests, where you pretty much inoculate the soil kind of between rows of trees, so that you can get the colonies kind of moving further and further away from the tree, and in theory, like out towards the roots, so you can get more of a surface area for truffles.
That's pretty cool. Is there, I mean, this is pretty neat. This is new, and it's happening here in Paso. So I think we're pretty stoked at the fact that this is something that's, yet now another interesting agricultural product that exists here. Are there certain regulations, or are there things you guys have to be concerned about at all in the growing of truffles that becomes something to be aware of?
I mean, I think contamination is the biggest thing.
Okay.
It's basically keeping out other kinds of fungi, mushrooms. We have found some like native truffles where we don't really know what they are, or if anyone's actually really classified them yet, but we just want it. The biggest risk is having anything else come in and compete. So that's, I think, in my mind, the biggest thing. And number 2, water, just hoping for more rainfall. So yeah.
The natural rainfall, definitely. And you're over in the Templeton Gap area, and we'll get into that here in just a minute. But that's definitely something that obviously comes into play, not just for our vineyards, but for so much more in the area. So it's pretty neat, though, that you have special truffle smelling dogs that help you find them. You're not just like digging around and finding them or anything like that.
Yeah, no, we got Lolo, the Legato. It's a longer Italian breed name for the dog. And she's super cute and super motivated to find the truffles. You can actually hunt for truffles or train any dog. So we are, Lolo's our number 1. And then we're probably going to look to train one ourselves, so we can hunt more often and find them when the truffles are fresher, or not just fresher, but when they're perfectly ripe.
Are you going to train your dog? Your dog's super motivated.
He is. I'm like, and also our French consultant thinks that my dog would be great because he's super eager to please people and also for food, and he's smart but not too smart, which is great too. But at this point, I'm trying to outside of like the truffle harvest season, I'm trying to focus mainly on the wine and winemaking, and trying to have actually someone else maybe locally train a truffle dog. So we shall see.
Cool. That's pretty neat. The truffles now, I mean, Lucas, have you tasted them? I mean, Brian, I know you have, but Lucas,
I haven't. There weren't that many to go around, and they went to some of the top restaurants where, I mean, you just happen to be lucky enough to have a reservation when we were making phone calls, and yeah, those people got a treat for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, talk a little bit about the flavor.
So I'd say fairly earthy. little bit almost like kind of nutty to a certain extent, but we've also noticed that like there is some kind of terroir to the truffles too. In terms of like the aromatics are slightly different from ours compared to the ones when you buy from like New Zealand or Western Australia or even Europe. But so far I've actually only had one truffle myself because I put the emphasis on selling it to the restaurants over us enjoying them. But you know, soon enough, yeah, we're hunting again the 11th and 12th, so we'll have more truffles on the way. Definitely keep some for ourselves. Definitely gonna make some truffle olive oil as well and truffle cheese with it. So
Cool.
more to go around for people.
What are the restaurants saying? Like, who's getting them and what are they saying about them?
Yeah, so far, Les Petits Canailles and Six Test Kitchen have gotten them, and then also Bell's and Los Alamos, and they're all really excited because at the end of the day, we have something unique to offer. Because if they're buying truffles from the Southern Hemisphere or also Europe, like those are going to be a week, 2-3 weeks old by the time they get them. So they're getting a truffle, like when it came to like Les Petits Canailles, I literally pulled it out of the ground that morning and it was on their menu that evening, which is
Wow.
yeah. So it's kind of cool just because there's not really much competition and we can kind of, yeah, make a nice little niche for local eateries in California for now. And we'll see when we get up to, you know, 5 or 10 pounds per acre, then that'll probably have to go a little bit more than Slow County, but yeah, we'll cross the bridge when we get to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Lucas, over at Coastal Vineyard Services, I mean, is this something now that you guys are kind of seeing like, whoa, there was success here? Maybe, you know, we can kind of incorporate this into some of the stuff that we do as far as consulting and planting and all of that kind of stuff.
It takes a specific site. So it is really interesting and super cool to be involved with, and, you know, just, yeah, certain philosophies that we've shared with the Farrells, and just watching the place go herbicide free, and, you know, they're really conscious about their irrigation practices. It kind of does fit in with a lot of the things that we're doing on the vineyard side of things, but it is such a long term process where a lot of people are, you know, grapes are still, I think, going to hold the market. There are a few other things like you know, you and I have conversed a little bit about agave. There are a few other projects that I do see coming in, but if more people become successful at growing truffles, then I think people may start to go. But right now, the other farms not producing commercially, it kind of, it still really limits the market. But
so it's not like people are going to start, you know, planting on their land or looking to try to do something. It's not something that's going to kind of, you know, spread like crazy. It's still really kind of, you know, a process essentially, right?
It is, for sure. And, you know, the mystique of having a truffle is pretty phenomenal, but I think most people who come to Paso are still driven by wine. That's still the driver. So it's another awesome piece of the puzzle of Paso Robles, having truffles that are successfully grown here. And they're not, seeing the other people growing them, it really has to do with site, and it really has to do with how you care for them. And then, you know, the pH is so critical. Just trying to keep an environment that's good for, conducive for fungus to grow. So, you know, light watering more often, and just trying to keep the soil moist. And it's really interesting. And then talking to the French consultant, Pierre, just some of the goals that we're working towards, you know, trying to drive the truffles a little bit deeper in the soil so that they don't require as much water. Is kind of, I don't know, just ideas that are a little bit different from they're outside our usual box, but it's for sure fun.
Yeah, I bet. What about pest management? What do you got going on with that?
I mean, the number one pest for us are rodents, and in order to take care of rodents organically, we can trap, or there's a gopher gasser that pumps carbon monoxide down in holes to kill them in their holes. It's made here in Paso, and that tool has been really, really invaluable this past year because, as we learned last year, you find little hits here and there because the rodents love the truffles as much as we do. So they'll come in, they'll gobble up a truffle, and they'll spread little bits here and there, and then the dog gets really confused because they're not sure, do I go down that hole? Is it over there? Do I tag little pieces here and there? So we've kind of refocused a lot of our efforts towards not only the irrigation system, making sure everything's exactly right, but also the rodent control. So
what are we talking?
Yeah,
squirrels and gophers, or just the
both?
Mainly,
Okay.
yeah, I think ground squirrels are the biggest culprit, but gophers are pretty bad too. So yeah, we're just we have a lot of ground squirrel barbecues every couple days during the week, and
I want to come to that.
population control. Yeah.
Pig or boar, any issues with them?
No,
Not
I
in
know.
that area. No, there are certain parts of town where the pigs have been in and out, but I've been amazed that they've kind of stayed out of. There's a big swath of town that they just haven't shown up in yet.
Mhm. And then how, I mean, otherwise, as far as, ways of mitigating some of this rodent stuff that you're doing, that's kind of, your efforts. I mean, are you also trying to incorporate more like owl boxes and hawk perches and things like that as well?
From a grower standpoint, yeah, the owl boxes, we have 2 owl boxes going in this week. The raptor perches are not necessary there at the Caelesta site because there's so many beautiful oak trees in amongst, and they're much larger than native, live oaks, and the valley oaks are much larger than the trees that we're trying to cultivate. So the hawks and the owls have perches to sit on. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's good to know.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, the best thing for sustainability across the board is to try and put out as many owl boxes as you can, and take care of your rodents without any sort of additional means. But it's
Is there a
really
certain
difficult.
time of year that you should build owl boxes? Like, is it now? I mean, is it like they're looking around to find a new place or something here in the winter?
Typically January, February, they're looking to find their nest for the year. And you get a pair in that's going to have a clutch of eggs. You're gonna do well through the whole season because you usually have 2 adults and up to 7 offspring, and everybody needs a gopher every night. So if you can, it's pretty incredible. If you can make an environment that is really conducive to having owls, you're gonna take care of a lot of rodents. But populations naturally ebb and flow. So if you have a big rodent population, you're probably gonna have a big owl population, and then the owls will find another place to eat for a year or a season, and then they'll come back because maybe your population is going again. But the rodents that owls go for they really only go after the gophers because they're the ones that come out at night. We're more dependent upon the raptors during the day to come down and grab the ground squirrels. And the ground squirrels they get around. If you've seen them run all over the place, they can go from site to site to site and cause a lot of damage.
Yeah, and there is that really nice. So unfortunately, I don't have a picture to share with you, all of you, but in my tour of the Caelesta Vineyard, which is pretty amazing, I think we'll talk a little bit about the vineyard as a whole because it's a 200-acre property there that with a little over 30 some acres planted to vines, I believe it is. But then they also have these nice little wildlife corridors there, and in a crease between some of the hills, there's this beautiful forest area that I'm sure is full of really great birds that want to help you guys out with all of the rodents and stuff. So it's a really neat property for sure. I'm curious about the spacing on the trees. Now think back on the pictures of those holly oaks. With the spacing, talk to me about that. Like why is that spacing the way it is and all that good stuff?
So our spacing's essentially 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet. And that is considered high density in the world of truffle cultivation.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So I've only been to, I think, 1 commercial truffier, I guess 2, down in Western Australia, and their trees were probably 15 by 15 or even 20 by 20. I think like the thought process for us is like 10 feet by 10 feet. If you can get the roots to essentially go 5 feet in each direction, you basically have the entire area between the rows, all root structures for truffles. So that's the goal. So now it's a matter of getting the roots out that far.
Yeah. And essentially this is basically gonna be a dry farmed situation, right? Is that the goal?
That's the goal. Definitely depends on the rainfall though, for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to grapes. But yeah, no, we want to use as little water as possible for especially given the situation we're in with the whole state and locally. So that is the goal. So right now I think they're still, they've been established, so we can kind of just measure soil moistures and do it on an as needed basis.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure. And on that note, we
Sure.
also like most people would think when you see a sprinkler or you talk about a sprinkler system, what you see is like big old rainbird just shooting water out there. No, the entire Truffier is set up on micro sprinklers. So it's this little tiny thing. So it's more of a mist
Oh,
that kind of keeps the soil moist rather than something we're trying to like, we're not trying to soak the ground. We're just
Yeah.
trying to keep you know, it's the first 6 to 8 inches conducive for growing the truffles. Because if it dries out, everything migrates farther down in the soil and it becomes much harder to harvest.
yeah. Lucas, what's the education process been like for you in this? Because you've been doing vines for a while, but what was that
You know,
like?
I talked to Steve Vieira quite a bit about it right at first, because it was kind of brand new idea to me. And he'd been investigating Truffiers and planting trees for people in the past. And then, you know, really once you nail down the basics of the pH needs to be a certain place and you need to keep the soil moist to a certain level, and then do as minimal input as possible. We do a few extra things, like we try and keep the cover crops low so it doesn't use too much water. And then rodent control is the main thing. But yeah, there are challenges in certain spots where we have to get the pH up a little bit, but even where we have to do that, we have, we've sourced lime from Lime Mountain. I don't know if you know about Lime Mountain. It's one of the biggest lime quarries in the West Coast. It's right here in Paso Robles. So I just made a few phone calls to a couple friends, and all of a sudden a couple trucks show up with lime that's from here in Paso to keep those little areas that we're seeing the pH drop a little bit, so we can keep the pH higher. And it's kind of a long-term lime releases over time. It's a really high pH, super high in calcium, and then you add it every few years and you keep your pH high enough. And
Yeah, that's cool. We have a great question here.
Yeah.
Harvesting truffles, and this actually, I mean, it's brilliant because I mean, they're probably pretty delicate. You don't want to like with a shovel all of a sudden cut one in half. I mean,
Yep.
or are you like digging with your hand? Is the dog doing, like, who's doing it?
So the dog is sometimes allowed to, but as soon as you like scrape or scratch the truffle, it like loses value. It's purely aesthetics at the end of the day, but like when restaurants are charging you, you know, X amount of dollars to shave it on your plate, you want the prettiest looking truffle you can find. So a lot of the times we'll let the dog dig a little bit, and then from there we'll kind of, you know, hand dig, and then you pretty much just stick your face in the hole to smell if you can see the truffle, and then you can kind of figure out in what direction to go. But yeah, it's mainly kind of by hand.
You have to be like a paleontologist practically to try to.
Yeah, and you have to have a really good nose. I mean, the truffle smells pretty you know, iconic, but it's yeah, it's still, you need to have your face an inch away from the dirt and just get in there.
And then, I mean, do you have to clean them before they go to you're not like, you know, you're not taking your vegetable scrubber and like, you know, there's probably a process. What's that like?
Cold water and a toothbrush.
Oh, actual water.
Yeah.
I was kind of assuming it was maybe a paper towel or something, you know.
Yeah, no, cold water. Yeah, just cold water and a toothbrush, and you know, takes, you know, 5 minutes to clean each one, something like that. So like our process is, as soon as we finish the hunt, we bring the, you know, bag of truffles up or whatever, and then we clean, weigh and photograph each one before it goes out to market, just to know what we're kind of dealing with and like what our average weights are. And we also kind of tag like on a spreadsheet like which tree produces or has produced and what it has produced as well, just to have the data look back on too. Yeah.
Is there some form of thought process like, oh, okay, this tree now we're not going to see another truffle from this tree for, you know, X amount of time?
Yeah. I think it's, we don't, even though we do have it by like a tree to tree basis, it's kind of more seeing patterns with like bigger or like larger little areas of trees. So it can be like, well, this, if, you know, one area is not producing, we'll be like, well, that's where we'll inoculate the ground next time we inoculate the ground. But yeah, so far, it's pretty much once they're producing, they're producing. So it's kind of, and it's just totally variable. I just like the whole planting them and even getting truffles is a complete gamble. Knowing what tree will do year to year is also just a pretty big question mark. And
Yeah.
We've only early like we or like, you know, people have only been commercially cultivating them for like 5 decades maybe, and there's really not a lot of great data and historical or mainly historical data on them. So that's something that we're just trying to do our best to get some information that we deem valuable and see how it goes from there.
Yeah. Do another question coming in. Do the dogs like to eat the truffles?
No,
Finder's fee or
they
something?
like to smell them. They're honestly trained like, you know, like a drug sniffing police dog would be trained.
Yeah.
So they like to find the truffles because they know they get food. But to my knowledge, I haven't encountered a dog that likes to eat them.
Okay.
But that's the same reason why people like always ask like, oh, do you use pigs to find them? But the thing with pigs was they were great at finding them, but they'd also eat them. The dogs are just a lot more trainable.
Wow. It's amazing what dogs and their noses can do. I found out this weekend, this is old news to people, but I was at a concert and I heard that the band actually, we're friends, have a friend of a friend that's friends with the band and that major touring act, and that they actually have employed COVID sniffing dogs that tour with the band. So that way they can ensure that the people around them are all free of COVID. It's amazing what dogs can smell. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's one of the tools in the vineyard, right?
Yep. And that's like also, since like pretty much any dog can be trained in theory, like the dog that found the first truffle we ever had was like a German Shepherd mutt rescue that, you know, learned at like 5 years old. So it's like you can train anyone. That's our goal, is to find a dog more locally so we can hunt like every week or every other week as opposed to 2 or 3 weeks in between, just to pick them at optimal ripeness.
Yeah. How long does a hunt take? I mean, is that, you know, you just dedicate an hour or two, or?
So we usually do 3 to 4 hours. Cause at that point, the dog's probably kind of tired from walking because you're just walking back and forth. So you're getting a lot of steps in. And then also like their nose is also a bit tired. So that's where the truffle dog company we use, that's called the Truffle Dog Company they're outside of Seattle. Whenever they come down, we do 2 or 3 days at a time, and we'll do like 3 or 4 hours a day, just so we can cover the whole 10 acres without having to like cram it all in one day.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. Awesome that we have this going on here, and I can't wait to see kind of where it takes us here, because pretty soon here now we're not only being known for growing some exceptional grapes and creating some exceptional wines, but you know, chefs from around are going to start hopefully sourcing some truffles from the area. So seeing your success and the potential of a couple other, because as you were saying, Lucas, there's a few others they're attempting this right now. It would be interesting to see and hope that they have success as well, because this is just yet another neat agricultural boon for our area, I suppose. So what are you guys drinking? Because we've been sitting here sipping along and everything, and I feel like I'm just kind of listening in. But Brian, let's start with you. What are you sipping on?
I'm drinking our Caelesta GSM from 2018. It's pretty much equal parts raw Grenache Mourvèdre, and about 50% new oak on it, and aged in a mix of barriques and puncheons for 22 months. My 18s are what's currently released. They're drinking really, really well right now. And yeah, I'm still, even though I taste them in the tasting room every day, I'll still gladly have a glass or two of this.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Speaking of tasting room, your tasting room is where, downtown?
That is correct. So it's at 12th and Spring Street. So across from Spearhead Coffee, also located right next to Il Cortil and the Piccolo Hotel as well.
Oh, nice. That's a great location and a very busy corner. Lucas, what are you sipping on?
I'm sipping on my wife and I's bubbles, our Heliotide bubbles.
Heliotide. Talk a little bit about that brand.
So Heliotide is a brand, just sparkling wine, strictly sparkling wine, in a traditional method, more of a traditional vintage style sparkling wine that my wife and I make. We've been doing it since 2016. I'm sipping on the 18 bubbles. It's or the extra brut rosé, sourced from Avila Beach. Our goal was to try and make some really high quality bubbles on the Central Coast because it's what we prefer to drink most days, and then try and source grapes from either good friends or things that I help farm that are really close to the ocean. And so far the response has been, it's been incredible. I mean, we're both humbled by when we send out a release, all the people that come back. And yeah, the first 2 vintages have sold out. We're starting to disgorge the next release, which will be our 2017 Blanc de Blanc, which is from the Stolo Vineyard. We're going to do that, I think, this weekend. We're actually going to try and get through a decent chunk of the production, and everything's done by hand. So
Wow.
hand disgorging takes a long time. Hand corking, caging, doing it all. Hand riddling. Nicole goes to our winery that we lease. That's yeah, she riddles every single bottle. It's truly a labor of love, but
Wow.
I don't know. It's something we really are passionate about. And it's
That's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the product is phenomenal. It's what we've opened every single time when we found truffles.
Yeah, it's been awesome to have industry support, the Farrells, and it's been incredible. Our primary customer is actually winemakers and other industry folks. So it's just been, I mean, it's like I said, it's just humbling to have so many people enjoy what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the case production again?
this one was about 100 cases.
Okay.
The first release was 40 cases, and then we stay at about 100 cases for the next 3 vintages. The goal is to release spring and a fall. So it'll be rosé in fall, and springtime it'll be Blanc de Blanc. So far, everything's been, because we dosage by hand, we do all the dosage trials. The Blanc de Blanc has been a brut 0, so no dosage and no sulfur so far at bottling. And then the rosé is no sulfur bottling, and also 3 grams per liter. So it's an extra brut rosé, a little bit drier, kind of a very lean style of sparkling wine.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Heliotide, where does that name come from?
Heliotide is actually derived from the family name for abalone, Heliotis. And we wanted to tie the idea to the ocean. Nicole and I have been abalone diving and love the ocean. I have a fishing boat. Used to surf all the time, pre-kids, the whole story.
I know you haven't been in the water in a
I
while.
watch
have
you
you?
surf all the time, and I'm like, oh man, how did you figure that out? But your kids are a little older than mine, so
My kids are older now. Yeah. Before
I
I
got
didn't
the
surf for a while.
yeah, exactly. I got the hope it's coming back, but yeah. So tying it to the ocean, having something lean, crisp, cool, something you can drink while having oysters. If you got it's another one of our culinary delights here on the Central Coast is the Morro Bay Oyster Company and Neil's Oysters out there. Man, it's incredible to see the culinary scene.
We have a lot of these, right? The rose oyster, I think.
Yeah, the red abalones. Yep.
Yeah, the
tons of
red
black
abalone. Sorry, oyster. Jesus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I talked to some of the old timers. So we get these grapes from the Stolo Vineyard, which I used to farm. My wife used to be the winemaker out there. And you talk to some of the neighbors out there who are in their 80s and 90s, and they still have piles of abalone shells, black abalone shells underneath their houses, because they used to just walk down the coast and, oh, there's another abalone. Let's go grab as many as you can carry and carry them home. Back when it was a different time. So yeah.
Yeah, that was and every now and then you still see some abalone shells wash up here and there. I know all along that Cayucas coast, especially with what used to be an abalone farm there, lots of spores and the like would make it out into the ocean. And so there's still a few out there, I suppose, but not.
Yeah, if you know where to look. I've been diving out there spearfishing and found a few. Super low tides. If you know where to look, there are abalone still out there, and it's just rewarding to see the population hopefully rebound. Because
are you using a Hawaiian sling or you have a gun?
I have a spear gun when I go diving, but that, like, surfing, it happens on Father's Day, maybe, when I get to choose what I'm going to do. But yeah, it's just, I'm very hopeful for when the kids get a little bit older. My son's getting to the point where he really wants to come fishing with me. And
oh, that's great.
He's got his wetsuit. He loves to stand up in the, the whitewash. But we're just not quite to the point where I'm comfortable with him a little bit deeper. So
yeah, absolutely. Now my 11-year-old wants to try poke poling now over there. So
It's awesome. I'll give you some spots when we get off because I'm not going to
All right, let's talk about that for sure. Because
Yes.
I'd like to get myself hands on one of those eels or whatever that they've got down there and all of that. Oh, I should mention thank you very much, Brian, by the way, the Caelesta Templeton Gap Rosé. I am really dying to know what goes into this bottle of rosé. It is so delicious. As you can see, it's almost mostly gone. I will admit it's not just me, but the team has been coming in and stealing a little bit of rosé as we've been on today. But what is in this rosé?
So that is actually the first wine, our first estate wine ever be released. So we started getting fruit in 2019, and then so it's 2020 rosé. It's 85% Grenache and 15% Mourvedre. And I believe it's something along the lines of 75% of that is direct press Grenache. So what I personally like is somewhere between 60 to 80% of a Grenache to be direct press, meaning you pick the fruit specifically for rosé, press it on skins for an hour or two, and ferment it like a white wine, as opposed to Saignée, which is the remainder of that blend, where you're bleeding off a red ferment to make that more concentrated or something along those lines. So I like a little bit of both. So for me, I blend the Saignée, that was the Mourvedre and Grenache co-ferment back into the straight Grenache, essentially to round it out acid wise and kind of give it a nicer little body and add some color too. But yeah, it honestly depends on how it's tasting, and yeah, it depends on the vintage too. But yeah, that's my favorite rosé I've made thus far.
Yeah, it's you done well.
Yeah, and then like obviously aged in stainless steel for like 4 or 6 months too before bottling.
You just released it. How many cases?
I think I did about 80. So yeah, so that's where I'm hoping I can get through this summer with it and get ready to go at it again this harvest.
I don't think it's going to last through the summer, by the way.
Yeah, I know. We'll see.
Retail?
Retail, like where can you find it to buy? Or
the pricing and then
retail. Got it. Retail price is 26, and then wine club is 15% off. Or I also am now doing a locals wine club that is 20% off as well if you're in SLO County.
And if you go to Kalesta.com, you could probably purchase it there, and you might be able to ship to most states or.
Yeah, I signed up with a company that I can now ship to probably about 45 states, I think. Yeah, I'm excited for that too.
Excellent. Lucas, Heliotide, I mean, you said that mostly locals are purchasing it, which I need to get on that train and get some of your wines, by the way. But how do we find out more about Heliotide and if somebody wanted to purchase some of those wines?
It's heliotide.com. To purchase the wines, you got to sign up on a list. Unfortunately, we don't make that much, so it's highly allocated. And yeah, it's Esther Mobley up at the Chronicle was very kind and wrote a piece on us right around New Year's, and the response after that has been, I mean, it's mind-blowing to see how many people are excited about it. But sign up on the list, and it will become available at some point.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of us ramping up a little bit of production. We're sourcing from some new vineyards for 2021. Working with the Derby Vineyard. I don't know if anybody knows the Derby Vineyard, but Derby West is, you see the ocean from the vineyard.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
Zebras next to San Simeon sitting there between you and the ocean. And got fruit from there. Got some fruit that I have a hand in growing a little bit down at Jesperson. And the Jesperson Ranch, it's owned by the Niners. And then we also branched out and got some Bassy fruit. Biodynamically farmed. Same farmer who grows our Topatero vineyard right there in Avila. Yeah, really excited about the upcoming releases because it's going to change a little bit. And we're going to try and highlight specific terroirs with our bubbles as the brand evolves.
Yeah, I think I have a picture of the Derbyshire vineyard here. Hopefully it comes up okay. Let's just see.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's the ocean.
Yeah.
It's so incredible. And Steve does a really good job with it. He's been really receptive. One of our goals is to farm, it seems cliche now, but it's as organically as possible. And Steve has gone above and beyond and asked us to, help him implement plans to use zero herbicides. And yeah, we're just really pumped on it.
Yeah.
We've been able to-
Heliotide. We had a quick question here. How do you spell it? Is it Haliotide?
That is correct. Yep.
All right. We got it on there as well. We had help from somebody answering. I don't know if that was you, Brian, or
Oh,
not.
that was me.
Yep.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you for that. We got just a little bit of time left, about 15 minutes. I wanted to talk about what's happening in the vineyard before we let these guys go. We'll also talk a little bit about obviously the Caelesta Vineyard, but I do want to get to that because I think mainly what's going on right now is pruning, right, Lucas?
It is. It's pruning, and if you're a vineyard manager, you've got shears in your pocket right now. You will notice everybody in the vineyards has shears because it is pruning season. There are a few other exciting things going on. We're doing a lot of undervine kind of cultivation to stay herbicide free. But pruning season is here, and we're making our cuts on our vines, pruning off the dead wood. A lot of what we're doing is planning for 2022 harvest and then 2023 to follow. Because when you make a cut on a vine, you're actually directly affecting the architecture of the vine. So you have to plan a few years ahead. We take a lot of things into account, like at Brian's place, we have target goals for what we want to get for yield. So then we take it back to what his cluster weights were. Then we figure how many clusters per vine we need to make sure that we leave enough growing points out there in the field to hit the targets of all of our clients. And yeah, we have spur prune vines, cane prune vines, a couple different ways to prune vines, tying them down, getting just basically now we have till the end of February to get ourselves prepped.
Wow.
And even though it's been really, I saw the comment earlier about the snowstorms. It's been cold here. It's not been snowing, but man, it was mid-20s yesterday morning and high 20s this morning. But the vines, with this lack of moisture in the ground to insulate the ground to keep it cold, they seem to want to wake up a little bit earlier right now. We're making cuts and they're starting to ooze some sap, which usually happens the tail end of February, not the beginning of February. So we're really hopeful that we get some more cold coming up and some more rain, of course, more rain.
Yeah. And when it comes to that, there's no way for in a kind of a man-made sense, you can slow that down. That's just the earth is waking up and we're warm and sap's going to push. There's nothing in the pruning method or something you can do in the vineyard that can kind of dampen that, is there?
There's a little bit, but it was, it used to be taken more seriously, the ability to prune at a certain time and delay bud break or make your bud break happen earlier. But really with all the work that we've done to really do that, you actually have to see green growth and then make a cut, and that will really slow things back. So in colder areas, the trend has been to plant rootstock that wake up later and really do the research and make sure you're putting in the right rootstock in the right places so that we can passively avoid frost rather than having to sprinkle a vineyard or something like that.
Yeah.
But
does that work with sprinkling a vineyard? You mean rainbird overhead, or?
There are a couple different ways. Yeah, rainbirds overhead is, the traditional larger way to do it, but that gobbles up water. It's something like, 50, 60 gallons per acre per minute. It's incredible the amount of water you use. So now people are going towards micro sprinklers, but you were asking earlier about how this, truffles has kind of maybe helped me evolve or some of my farming thoughts. And we're paying a lot more attention now, actually. It didn't occur to me at the time, but we're paying a lot more attention to what's going on underground and trying to keep the biome under the soil happy. And by keeping it slightly damp, that's how we're able to do that and keep those microbes there, churning, devouring the green matter and turning it into something that's plant usable nutrition wise, so that we don't have to add fertilizers. So we are irrigating a little bit right now to supplement, but no little, a little dripper next to a vine is nothing compared to a rain event that just drenches all the earth. And it's like you can feel the area kind of sigh of relief when it rains. Especially after a really dry season. The first rains of the year is pretty incredible. I usually just open the windows and sit outside and just listen to it come down. And yeah.
Yeah. You said that there are some techniques in pruning. I mean, is there anything you could share with us about, like, you know, in that and in those techniques, or, you know, with the shears, or with, you know, where
I'm not
the
gonna demo all
position
my
goes on
fingers, but, you
shears
know,
with vine?
with your shears, yeah, a lot of people, it's really interesting. When we were in college, we always thought bigger shears, easier to cut. I've actually transitioned down to a really smaller pair of shears, Felco 8s, because we're really trying to, when you're cutting on a vine, there are so many little intricacies. One of them being that, you know, you don't really want to cut as close to a bud as possible. The new thought process, you need to leave a little bit of wood above a bud to let it die back, so that it doesn't affect the bud and the sap that flows to that bud, or the phloem that flows back down from the green growing tissue down into the roots. And then really the buds are so sensitive. You really have to be careful and delicate with when you're cutting. We oftentimes, when we're doing a spur prune, where you're leaving the little, you know, the little spurs, oh man, I wish I had it here. I have one. Guillaume has this awesome little diagram that shows his different training styles. But we really try and avoid touching the buds, and we'll go through, we'll double prune sometimes, where we cut the tops off. We get all that growth from last year out of the way, so that when we're pruning, we can just focus on what's right in front of you, and you never move your head out of the position of cutting, where we used to be, okay, we're going to cut down here, and then you got to rip all this trash out of the wires and get it gone. So yeah, being as detail oriented as possible is just, and it's kind of what drives our company. It's incredible. I see different things in our owner Kevin, and when we walk vineyards, it's kind of like, man, how did I not see that? Or, hey, did you notice that? And it's just the details and the exact precision that we're going for. It's just, it's fun. There's never a dull moment in the vineyards.
Yeah. What, Brian, over at the Caelesta Vineyard, what leaf are you guys on now? Like how many years are you at?
Oh, so it depends on the block. So the majority was planted in 2017, and we were just kind of surprised. We got fruit in 2019. So it was just, it's a surprisingly vigorous site for how steep it is, and how calcareous the soils are as well. But yeah, no, we're now I think we're just hitting our real stride in terms of figuring out what block each can do, or what each block can do. And then we're also doing more focus on phenolics for color and tannin on each block, and seeing what the vineyard does versus what I do in the winemaking side. So still, we're 6-7 years in, but it's we're just beginning to hit our stride in terms of the winemaking.
You've had a lot of training also in the Southern Hemisphere. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, are there some differences that you see between, what we have up here, Northern Hemisphere, these particular blocks, and what you learned down under, I guess, and what you've applied? I mean, is there some stuff to share there?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I was definitely a little bit shell-shocked when I first went down there. I went from working at Epic here in Paso. Love their wines, one of the most beautiful wineries, and it was honestly one of the best places I've ever been trained in terms of doing cellar work. It's pristine there. And then I went to Australia for a winery that, they make $25 bottle wines up to like 500 or something, and outdoor wineries, open top fermenters, when I say open top, I mean like not even a screen on top for some of them. So the whole sanitation thing was a whole different ball game. And then they were actually doing a lot of the hotter ferments that I now do. Just because I was still learning at the time when I was down there, before I was making my own wine, really. But definitely learned a lot. It's really interesting seeing like how their vineyards can produce such powerful, I mean, especially like Shiraz, when it's a lot of the Barossa is pretty flat, pretty, like a little hilly, but nothing crazy. And then you come to Paso and you look at our slopes and they're incredibly extreme, but they're able to make a really, really like extracted Syrah that, is somewhat comparable to ours. So it's just cool seeing how people can end up making similar wines, in different hemispheres and totally different, environments and topographies.
That's cool. It's funny, but everybody watching here, when I went and I visited Brian over at the Caelesta Vineyard, At first I was, yeah, and I'm supposed to know this stuff, right? I'm the guy that's supposed to know AVAs in the Paso area. And I actually thought I was in the El Pomar. I was standing on this hill. It was like all El Pomar, it had all the little white rocks and it was steep and all that. You know, Templeton Gap in my head, I don't always figure it was right on that. I think that I guess you could say western or southwestern edge of the Templeton Gap AVA. And I should have known because it's right across the street from Victor Hugo, and Victor Hugo is, of course, in the Templeton Gap AVA. But his property is a little bit more the rolling hill type of thing, where this was just this dramatic hillside. And I know you're currently building a winery on site, right? Will you eventually have things that people can visit that there, you know, at the vineyard, so people can see this really cool site?
Yeah, so definitely. So right now we're still, I think the winery will probably be done later this year, and then the tasting room comes after that. So we're looking to start really hosting people probably about this time next year, hopefully. So right now we're still kind of a baby, 'cause, you know, we've only been doing the Caelesta brand since 2017, and I've only released 2 vintages of the reds. So just kind of still getting the name out there and getting exposure. So that's where the downtown tasting room came into play. So the goal of the next 5 years is to, you know, get the trafficking exposure there, then push to like the vineyard for more experiential and kind of higher end tastings. And there is a possibility that some pretty good food will be going in there as well, to have 4 or 5 days a week too.
Yeah, that would be great. The hilltop that you took me to had this perfect view of the actual land mass thing of the Templeton Gap, that you can literally see the kind of almost saddle in the overall outline of the Santa Lucia mountain range. And so all I got to say is that if you ever have the opportunity to do a tasting someday, if you create it up there, like a deck or a thing up there, that would be so rad. So I think people would dig it. So anyway, hey, you guys, if you can believe it, it's actually almost been an hour. And this is the Paso Wine Hour, so we try to keep it to that. And I want to thank you guys. I want to thank Brian. I want to thank Lucas being on. Before we say goodbye, let's do a quick shout out, because we do have Blend Fest coming up on February 25th, I think. Sorry, JB. I know you're probably shaking your head or something, maybe even running out and saying yes or no. But anyway, go to pasowine.com and look up Blendfest. It's one of the major events on the front page. Brian, you are actually going to be pouring there, and I think you're part of the Robins dinner. There's probably tickets, JB.
Last I heard, I think there's a few. That was a couple days ago, so yeah.
So that sounds a lot of fun. And then I think, do you involve the public with truffle hunts at all ever?
Slowly but surely. So I'm doing events the 11th and 12th for the next truffle hunt, where we're truffle hunting from like 9:30 to noon, and then we're doing like a Neapolitan pizza and wine pairing over at the tasting room afterwards. So I gave first crack to wine club members at their discount, and then it's now available to the public on our website.
Okay,
so
cool.
That is, yeah.
Pitching. Well, if you get an opportunity to go to their website, check it out. Maybe you can get in on one of those. Otherwise, you can taste their wines at their downtown location. Lucas Pope, you and Nicole and your beautiful children, you guys are amazing. You have Heliotide. You can't get it, you guys. Can't get it.
It will be poured at World of Pinot.
Hey, there you go. Right on.
I believe World of Pinot is sold out. It's pouring on Friday at World of Pinot.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, then there's also one of the excursions. So the vineyard that I showed you guys a little bit ago, where there was the ocean in the background, we've got the Derbyshire excursion for Blendfest. Really super limited, but you get to go to that vineyard, get to taste wines from a couple of producers, including Derby, that are sourcing from that vineyard. I think it's Derby, Field Recordings, and Aaron Wines will all be there pouring their wines. Oh, it's sold out. Well, shoot. Sorry, guys. Anyway, I'm getting texts, you know. I don't know this stuff. Trust me. It's not like it just instantly pops in my head. I actually have help. Anyway, so thank you so much, Brian from Caelesta. Thank you, Lucas Pope, Coastal Vineyard Services. Cheers, you guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, till next time.
Next week, we have Brent from the Farm Bureau, San Luis Obispo Farm Bureau. He's going to be on talking about Farm Bureau and what Farm Bureau does for the wine industry. We also will have Molly Scott from Justin, who I think has been a board member and is often involved with Farm Bureau, and Doug Filipponi from Ancient Peaks Winery and the Santa Margarita Ranch. All neat people, fun people. We're going to talk a little bit about Farm Bureau and about some of the things and some of the challenges and some of the cool stuff that's happening here in agriculture in San Luis Obispo County. So please tune in for that. Otherwise, pasowine.com for all future shows. So right on, everyone. Thanks. See ya.
Cheers.
Thank you.